Thank you very much, Dr. Jim.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. I am here to share with you a story of construction. It was a while ago, probably let's say about 3 weeks or so ago, that I was asked by the president of the Institute for Electrical and Electronic Engineers, the IEEE, the world's largest professional organization, over 500,000 members worldwide, to give the keynote address at the 2012 IEEE USA, so the branch of the IEEE that's specifically for the USA, at their annual convention. Well, I know the president very well, and so really there was no reply to that request, except I'd love to. Now, one of the challenges that I have is that as a member of Toastmasters, I'm pretty comfortable giving speeches that are 5 to 7 minutes. A keynote, in case you hadn't realized this, is longer. It's potentially, like 6 5 to 7 minute speeches stuck together. So we're shooting for about 30 minutes. Now, I want to take you through sort of how I built this speech. And if you get interested in it, if this is something that fascinates you, you can actually watch the speech because it's on YouTube. Okay. So, anyway, so what's the first thing that you want to do when you're putting together a speech? Well, be aware of who you're going to be speaking to. Don't create a speech in a vacuum. You're not creating a speech for yourself. You're really creating a speech for your audience. And there has to be a reason that you're going to do it, right? If you're going to share your knowledge, if you're going to go through the effort of preparing, there has to be a reason for it, right? So you've got a few interesting different roles you can take on. You can do an informative speech where you have some knowledge that they don't know and you're going to share it with them. If you've ever gone to school, high school, college, anything like that, you know exactly what an informative speech is, right? That's what a teacher does. Now there's also the persuasive speech. If you want to convince your audience to do something, that's one particular type you can do. There's the motivational speech, which is a speech in which you point out to your audience that the way they're seeing the world isn't quite right. That things they might not realize are wrong, are really wrong, and that you want to motivate them to do something. And of course then there's the final option, a humorous speech. Humorous speeches are wonderful, they're fantastic. Your audience will enjoy it while you're doing it, and once you're done, they'll probably forget about it. So I had to make some decisions as to exactly what I wanted to do there. The way I did this is I sent an email actually to the president of the organization that I was going to be speaking to. I said, hey, what would you like me to do? Specifically what I told him is, hey, look, I got a good speech and an evil speech. Which one do you want me to use? I can go either way on this one, right? No big deal whatsoever. He came back somewhat surprisingly and said he wanted the good speech. That really limits me as a creative person, I want you to know that. But he said there's actually 2 things that he would like to accomplish. He wanted the people that I was talking to go back to their local organizations and hold more meetings. Within the IEEE, you have what's called a section, which is the local group. And the more meetings that they hold, the more involved they get their local members. He also wanted me to stress to them the importance of building memberships. Okay? With any organization, you will have roughly somewhere between about 12 and 25% turnover every year. People die. People get interested in other things, people move on, they switch careers, whatever. But you're always going to have a collection, a portion of your member base move on. Toastmasters has exactly the same thing. So you always have to be out there recruiting new members, basically to make up for the people who've left. He said these are the 2 things. So basically hold more meetings, so you deliver more value to your members, and then also you should always be recruiting, you should always be bringing people in. All right, so I had my 2 goals. Well, I had 2 goals on a blank sheet of paper at this point in time. So now the challenge was, well, how do I want to do this? Well, I had recently been doing some study, and there was a gentleman who had put together a series of training programs, and he revealed what his secret for a successful training program was. And that was what was in my mind at this particular point in time. He said he always started out his training programs by saying why. Why what he was going to be talking about was going to be of interest to the audience. The next thing that he talked about was what. So he was real clear about what he was going to be talking about. Okay? The third thing that he talked about was how. So I'm going to tell you specifically how to do something. And think about it. You know, of all the speeches, of all the talks that you've ever heard, probably when somebody tells you how to actually go about doing something, you're going, wow, I'm getting a ton of value here. And then he said the 4th thing that he suggested that you always put into any sort of presentation you do is what's called a what if. And this is a concept where you explain to the audience, if you do what I've told you, this is what your world's going to be like. This is what you can achieve. Sort of that little tail end motivational kick in the pants. Well, that sounds pretty good. So there I was. By the way, this particular conference was going to be held in Cincinnati, Ohio. So what do you know about Cincinnati? What's Cincinnati known for? Good. That was my thinking too. Nothing. It's a fine, wonderful town. I got no problems with that. It turns out it's actually known for chili. Chili's a very big deal. But if you don't know that, you don't know that. So in my life, the only thing I knew Cincinnati for was a TV show from the 1970s, which was called WKRP in Cincinnati. Now here's the thing. I knew my audience was going to be tending towards middle-aged to older folks. That's just who happens to be running the show. So I knew if I made a reference to WKRP in Cincinnati, they'd get it. All right, this would not be foreign. And, if I was dealing with 20-year-olds or something like that, that's an iffy one. That could go right over the head. But I knew if I brought it up. So when I was putting together my presentation, remember, my presentation is all about me. Me. I had slides, but the slides were there just to support, once again, me. All right, that's the whole concept here. So the very first slide that I put up had a picture of the cast from WKRP in Cincinnati. And the whole reason that I did this was simply to get the audience to laugh. So before the first word tumbled out of my mouth, I had the audience laughing. Now, right after that, I shared with them a story. Now, the story I told was about a situation where I was working as a software engineer. I may have shared it with you, I can't remember. And there was a problem because the guy wanted to know how much the software weighed. Okay? So what it is, it's a personal story that I was sharing with them. And when I was done with it, they were all laughing again. All right, so now I've connected with my audience. So this is good stuff. Now, this was actually the stretch for me. The next thing I did in my local section here in Florida, we'd had a long-time IEEE member who had died, who had passed on. He was 79, so although it's sad, that's just sort of how life goes and stuff like that. I then talked about him, and I talked about his accomplishments. And I pointed out that he could not have accomplished what he accomplished, and he would not be remembered like he's going to be remembered if he had not been a member of this professional engineering organization. He'd had a long career, like 30 years, but that's not what he was being remembered for. He was being remembered for his activities within the IEEE and the people that he had worked with and the lives that he had touched. So I talked about that and got everybody to go, wow, he really did a good thing. There's no question about that whatsoever. And then I said, if you would like to be remembered for changing the world like he was, here's what you have to do. And the answer to that was hold more meetings and recruit more members. Can you see sort of how this all sort of flowed together? And then I would make references back to him occasionally during my speech, saying, look, he had an impact on people, he changed the world. If you do these things, you will be able to change the world also. And I believe my concluding phrase out there is that, the world exists for you to change it. So go do it. Nice. Now, once again, this particular speech is about 30 minutes or so, I believe, is available on YouTube. If you search for, and I hope I get this right, I think 2012 and IEEE USA. Search for those three terms, 2012, IEEE USA. I think it pops up in YouTube and you can actually watch it. The most important thing I would stress about this is the first 2 minutes of my speech, I ran into two problems, two small technical problems. Not a big deal whatsoever, but if you're giving a speech, sometimes if it doesn't go right off the bat, it can just throw you off your whole game. So it's an opportunity to take a look at the speech, see how it happens, see how I rolled with it, and understand that it really didn't have any impact on the rest of the speech. Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Dr. Dick. Is there an electrical engineer in the audience?
Yeah. You have watched it, or at least the first part. So.